Thanksgiving at my grandfather's estate was never about gratitude. It was a performance. A yearly inspection disguised as family time, where power sat at the head of the table and everyone else measured their worth by how loudly they laughed at his jokes. The house itself was a monument to money, marble floors that never showed footprints, chandeliers that looked like frozen fireworks, and a dining table so long it felt like a negotiation room rather than a place to eat. I arrived early, as I always did, not because I was eager, but because arriving late gave them another excuse to comment on my lack of discipline. I wore the same modest navy dress I'd worn for years. No designer logo. No statement jewelry. Just clean lines and quiet confidence, though they mistook that silence for weakness. As servants moved around setting crystal glasses and polishing silverware, my cousins gathered in clusters, comparing stock tips, vacation homes, and whose bonus had crossed 7 figures first. I listened without joining in, my hands folded, my eyes lowered, not in submission, but in patience. My grandfather entered last, as always. The room shifted the moment he appeared. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Chairs scraped softly as people straightened their backs. He was tall even in old age, his white hair combed back, his cane more symbol than necessity. This was the man the business magazines called a visionary, a titan, a self-made legend. This was also the man who had never once asked me what I did with my life. Dinner began politely enough. Small talk, forced smiles. Then came the questions, directed at everyone except me. My cousin bragged about a merger. My aunt mentioned a new penthouse. My uncle complained about taxes. My grandfather nodded at each, offering approval or correction like a king passing judgment. I stayed quiet, sipping water, letting the noise wash over me. Then, inevitably, his gaze landed on me. He didn't smile. He never did when addressing me. "So," he said, loud enough to cut through the clinking of silverware, "what exactly do you do these days?" The table went still. This was the moment. It always was. Before I could answer, he continued, his voice sharpening. "Because last I checked, you were still floating around without anything impressive to show for it." A few people chuckled nervously. Someone coughed. My mother stared down at her plate. I met his eyes calmly. "I'm working," I said simply. He scoffed. "Working?" He leaned forward. "Doing what?" "Because I don't see your name in any boardrooms. I don't see you in the news. I don't hear anyone mentioning your success." His words echoed against the high ceiling. Heat rose in my chest, not from anger, but from familiarity. This script had been rehearsed for years. "I have no idea about any of that," I said evenly. That was when it happened. The room didn't just quiet, it froze. Forks hovered midair. Glasses stopped halfway to lips. My grandfather blinked, clearly not expecting that response. He straightened, his mouth tightening. "You have no idea," he repeated, incredulous. "You sit at my table, benefit from this family's name, and you have no idea?" "I have no idea about your expectations," I clarified calmly. "Or why my worth needs to be measured publicly." A shockwave rippled through the room. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not here. Not at Thanksgiving. His face darkened. "Careful," he warned. "You seem to forget who you're talking to." "I haven't forgotten," I said. "I just don't think this is the place." Silence pressed in from all sides. My aunt's smile vanished. My cousin shifted uncomfortably. My mother finally looked up, fear in her eyes. My grandfather leaned back, gripping his cane. "You think you're above this," he said. "Above family? Above tradition?" I replied, my voice steady, "that tradition shouldn't include humiliation." That was when he raised his voice. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he barked. "You don't understand business. You don't understand power. You don't understand what it takes to build something real." I nodded once. That may be true. A murmur spread, confused, startled. He expected defiance. Or apology. Not agreement. Then why are you even here? He snapped. If you contribute nothing, why sit at this table? I took a slow breath. This was the line. The one he'd used before. The one meant to put me back in my place. I'm here, I said quietly, because you invited me. A beat passed. And because, I added, you asked me to be. His eyes narrowed. I don't recall that. That's okay, I said. You will. The tension was unbearable now. No one spoke. Even the servants had stopped moving. Then the doorbell rang. Sharp, loud. Perfectly timed. Every head turned. A man in a tailored suit stepped into the dining room, holding a leather folder. He scanned the table, then locked eyes with me. Excuse the interruption, he said politely. I'm looking for her. My grandfather frowned. This is a private dinner. The man nodded. I understand. I'll be brief. He turned to me. Ms. Thank you for waiting. Shall we? The color drained from my grandfather's face. For a split second, no one moved. The lawyer, because that's what he clearly was, stood patiently near the doorway, leather folder tucked under his arm, posture calm but authoritative. The kind of man who didn't raise his voice because he never had to. My grandfather was the first to recover, though recover was generous. His jaw tightened, and he tapped his cane once against the marble floor, a sharp sound that usually meant order would be restored. This is inappropriate, he said coldly. Who sent you? The man didn't look at him. Not yet. His eyes stayed on me, respectful, waiting for my cue. That alone unsettled the room. People weren't supposed to ignore my grandfather, not in his own house. I apologize for the timing, the lawyer said evenly, but the matter is time-sensitive. I pushed my chair back slowly and stood. The sound of the legs scraping against the floor echoed far louder than it should have. My hands didn't shake. My heart wasn't racing. What I felt, more than anything, was relief. The moment I'd been preparing for quietly, carefully, had finally arrived. It's fine, I said. You can speak here. My mother inhaled sharply. My aunt whispered my name under her breath, a warning. My cousins stared at me like I'd lost my mind. My grandfather's eyes bored into me. Sit down, he ordered. I didn't. The lawyer opened the folder and removed a single document. For the record, he said, finally turning to my grandfather, I represent Ms. in several ongoing matters, including asset management, fiduciary oversight, and most relevant to tonight, family trust compliance. The word trust landed like a dropped plate. My grandfather straightened. What trust? The lawyer glanced at me briefly, then back at him. The one established 15 years ago under the holding company you registered in Delaware. The one you placed certain assets into without informing all beneficiaries. A hush fell so deep it felt like the air itself had thinned. That's confidential, my grandfather snapped. And you have no standing here. With respect, the lawyer replied calmly, we have all the standing we need. He slid the document across the table, not toward my grandfather, but toward my uncle, who sat closest. My uncle hesitated, then picked it up, scanning the first page. His face changed almost instantly. The smug confidence drained away, replaced by something raw and frightened. What is this? He whispered. My cousin leaned over his shoulder. Let me see. Read it out loud, my grandfather demanded. No one moved. I spoke instead. It's the beneficiary schedule, I said. The updated one. My grandfather's eyes snapped back to me. Updated by whom? By the person who actually understood what you were building, I replied. And what you were hiding. My aunt let out a shaky laugh. This is ridiculous. You don't even work in finance. I smiled faintly. That's true. I don't work in finance. The lawyer closed the folder and rested his hand on it. Ms. doesn't work in finance because she owns the firm that advises half of yours. That was when the room truly broke. My cousin laughed out loud, too fast. That's not funny. It's not meant to be, the lawyer said. My grandfather pushed back his chair and stood, towering despite his age. Enough, he barked. This is some kind of stunt. You think you can embarrass me in my own house? I met his gaze. You've been embarrassing yourself for years. I just stopped protecting you. My mother stood as well, panic flooding her voice. Please, can we talk about this privately? We are talking privately, I said. This is the family. The lawyer continued, unshaken. Over the past decade, Ms. has quietly consolidated minority stakes, paid off leveraged positions, and assumed controlling interest in 3 subsidiaries previously listed under nominee ownership. My uncle's hands trembled. That's impossible. It's not, I said. You just never thought to look. My grandfather's face reddened. You expect me to believe you did all this? No, I said. I expect you to remember that you taught me. That stopped him. You taught me, I continued, my voice steady, that the loudest person in the room is usually compensating. That real power moves quietly. That if you want to control something, you don't announce it, you structure it. The silence that followed was different now. Heavier. Charged. The lawyer slid another document onto the table. Effective immediately, he said, Ms. has exercised her rights to audit the trust and suspend discretionary distributions pending review. My aunt gasped. Suspend? You can't. We can, the lawyer replied. And we have. My cousin slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. You're doing this over a comment? I looked at him. No. I'm doing this because for years you mistook my silence for ignorance. My grandfather's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You planned this. Yes, I said honestly. I did. He stared at me, searching for something, hesitation, guilt, fear. He found none. And why now, he demanded. Why tonight? I glanced around the table, at the people who had laughed, judged, dismissed me year after year. Because tonight, I said, you asked me who I was. The lawyer cleared his throat. There is one more matter. My grandfather turned sharply. What now? The city is finalizing its review, the lawyer said. Several properties tied to the trust are currently non-compliant. Ms. has agreed to step in as the primary liaison. My uncle went pale. The city? Yes, the lawyer said. They'll be here shortly. As if summoned by his words, headlights swept across the tall windows at the end of the dining room. Multiple vehicles pulled into the circular drive. My grandfather's grip tightened on his cane. What did you do? I met his eyes one last time, calm and unwavering. I stopped saying I have no idea, I said. And I started telling the truth. The cars outside didn't stop immediately. They slowed, engines humming low, as if even they understood the weight of what they were approaching. Through the tall windows, flashing reflections danced briefly across the polished floor. No sirens. No drama. Just inevitability. My grandfather turned toward the windows, then back to me. For the first time in my life, his voice cracked, not loudly, not enough for anyone to comment on it, but enough for me to hear. You would bring outsiders into this, he said. On Thanksgiving. I didn't answer right away. I watched my family instead. My aunt clutched the edge of the table like it was the only solid thing left in her world. My uncle was whispering frantically to his wife, who stared straight ahead, lips pressed tight. My cousins avoided my eyes entirely. These were the same people who had laughed when I dressed plainly, who rolled their eyes when I chose books over parties, who called me slow, confused, the dumb one. This isn't about Thanksgiving, I finally said. It's about accountability. The lawyer checked his watch. "They'll want access to the study first," he said calmly. My grandfather stiffened. "That room is private." "It's also where you kept the secondary ledgers," the lawyer replied. "And the correspondence you assumed no one else understood." I saw it then, the exact moment my grandfather realized the ground beneath him was gone. Not slipping. Gone. His power had always rested on one thing. The belief that he was the smartest person in every room. That belief had protected him longer than money ever could. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Measured. Professional. The doors at the far end of the dining room opened, and 3 officials entered, city auditors, not police, but somehow that felt worse. Paperwork didn't negotiate. Regulations didn't care about reputation. "Good evening," the lead auditor said politely. "We're here regarding several outstanding compliance matters." My grandfather didn't respond. "I'll take you to the study," I said, already moving. No one stopped me. As we walked through the house, memories surfaced uninvited. This was the hallway where I'd once been scolded for reading during a party. The staircase where my cousin pushed past me, muttering that I was always in the way. The study door itself, heavy, carved, intimidating. A door I was never allowed to open without permission. I opened it without hesitation. The auditors went to work immediately. Filing cabinets. Drawers. Shelves behind shelves. The lawyer stood beside me, quiet, letting the process speak for itself. Behind us, my grandfather sank into a chair. "You did all this," he said softly, not looking at me. "Without anyone knowing?" "Yes," I replied. "Because every time I tried to speak, you told me I didn't understand." He let out a humorless breath. "And you let us believe it." "I didn't let you," I said. "You chose it." The lead auditor looked up. "We'll need full access to the digital records as well." "They're encrypted," my grandfather said automatically. I stepped forward. "I have the keys." That was the moment my mother finally broke. "Why didn't you tell us?" she cried. "Why didn't you say anything?" I turned to her, and for the first time that night, my voice softened. "Because every time I tried, you asked me to be patient. To be understanding. To not cause trouble." Tears streamed down her face. "We were just trying to keep the peace." "I know," I said. "But peace built on silence isn't peace. It's permission." The auditors packed up their initial findings and left with copies of everything they needed. They were polite. Efficient. Unimpressed by wealth or legacy. When the door closed behind them, the house felt hollow. Dinner had long gone cold. My grandfather remained seated, staring at the desk he once ruled from. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. The lawyer answered. "Now, there's a review. Then restructuring. Possible penalties. Asset reallocation." "And her?" my grandfather asked, nodding toward me. "She assumes interim control," the lawyer said. "As outlined." My uncle exploded. "You can't just take everything." I finally looked at him. Really looked at him. "I'm not taking anything," I said. "I'm taking responsibility." "There's a difference." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. One by one, my family began to leave the room. No arguments. No apologies. Just the slow retreat of people who had run out of excuses. My grandfather and I were alone at last. "You know," he said after a long pause, "I always wondered why you never fought back." I met his eyes. I wasn't waiting to fight. I was waiting to finish building. He nodded once. "You did." "Yes," I said. "I did." I left the house shortly after. The night air was cool, steady. Grounding. My phone buzzed his messages, notifications, headlines beginning to form. I didn't read them. Somewhere inside that house, a legacy was unraveling. Somewhere else, a new one was just beginning. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to explain myself to anyone. Because the truth no longer needed defending.